The rain hammered the bookstore windows like fists demanding entry, and inside Caleb's hands were still on Celine's bare shoulder when they both heard it. The unmistakable sound of a key turning in the front door. Her brother's key. Dylan wasn't supposed to be home for 3 more days. Celine's breath stopped. Caleb didn't move. In that frozen second, with his fingers still pressed against her skin and her pulse racing beneath his touch, they both understood the same terrible truth. What had started as kindness an hour ago had already become something neither of them could explain away. The lock clicked. The door swung open, and everything that had been quietly building between them was about to shatter into the open whether they were ready or not. If you want to see how this story unfolds, stay with me until the end. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story travels. Caleb Rowan had never planned on becoming the kind of person who stayed in Millridge. The town was fine, quiet, predictable, wrapped in that particular brand of small-town charm that looked good in photographs but felt suffocating when you actually lived there. He'd grown up here, gone to the same schools as everyone else, knew which families owned which shops and which streets flooded every spring. He knew it all too well, and that was exactly the problem. At 26, he worked remotely as a freelance coder, which meant he could have lived anywhere. New York, Austin, Portland, somewhere with better coffee and people who didn't ask him every week when he was going to settle down and get a real job. But he'd stayed, partly because the rent was cheap and the internet was decent, partly because his mom still lived 2 streets over and genuinely enjoyed his company, and partly, though he didn't like admitting it, because leaving felt like giving up on something he couldn't quite name. He'd always told himself he was a writer, not in the professional sense, but in the way that mattered. He had notebooks full of half-finished stories, a laptop cluttered with drafts that never went anywhere, and a persistent gnawing feeling that he was supposed to be creating something meaningful instead of fixing broken websites for clients who barely remembered his name. But the longer he stayed in Millridge, the easier it became to let that dream fade into background noise. Just something he used to think about. Just another version of himself he'd probably never become. It was a Thursday evening in late September when everything started to shift, though he didn't realize it at the time. Dylan Hart had been Caleb's best friend since middle school. They'd grown up together, gotten into trouble together, survived adolescence in the particular way that boys do when they find someone who speaks the same language. Dylan was loud, charming, fiercely loyal, and absolutely convinced that life was meant to be grabbed with both hands and wrung dry. He worked construction, played guitar badly, and had a habit of showing up unannounced with terrible ideas that somehow always turned into good stories. Dylan also had a sister. Seline Hart was 4 years older than her brother, which made her 32 to Caleb's 26. She'd left Millridge years ago, married some guy none of them had really known, and moved to a city 3 hours away. Caleb had only met her a handful of times when they were younger, brief, awkward encounters at family gatherings where she'd been polite and distant, and he'd been too young to register her as anything other than Dylan's intimidating older sister. Then, about 8 months ago, she'd come back. Dylan didn't talk about it much, but the basics were clear enough. The marriage had ended badly. Seline had returned to Millridge alone, rented a small apartment above the bookstore on Main Street, and taken a job managing the place. She kept to herself. She didn't go out much. And Dylan, protective in the way older brothers often are, even when their sisters are older than them, made it quietly clear that she was off limits for questions, gossip, or anything that might make her feel worse than she already did. Caleb had seen her around town a few times since she'd been back. She was tall, dark-haired, with the kind of face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile easily. She always seemed tired, not in an obvious way, but in the way someone looks when they're holding themselves together with effort. He'd nodded at her once in the grocery store. She'd nodded back. That had been the extent of their interaction, until tonight. Dylan had left town that morning for a long weekend job 2 states over, some big construction project that paid well enough to be worth the drive. He wouldn't be back until Monday. Caleb had helped him load his truck at dawn, half asleep and clutching a thermos of coffee, and Dylan had clapped him on the shoulder and said, "Keep an eye on things, yeah?" Caleb had assumed he meant water the plants or something. He did not think he meant check on your sister, but around 7 that evening, Caleb's phone buzzed with a text from Dylan. "Dylan, Celine's working late at the bookstore. She's been stressed. Can you swing by and make sure she's good? Don't make it weird." Caleb stared at the message for a long moment. He typed back, "Define, make sure she's good." Dylan, "I don't know, man. Just check in. She won't ask for help if she needs it." Caleb, "Why would she need help at a bookstore?" Dylan, "Just do it. I'll owe you." Caleb sighed. He didn't particularly want to go. He had work to finish, a deadline looming, and zero interest in awkward small talk with someone who probably didn't want him there. But Dylan didn't ask for favors often, and when he did, he meant it. So Caleb saved his work, pulled on a jacket, and walked the 6 blocks to Main Street. The bookstore was called Chapter and Verse, which Caleb had always thought was a little on the nose. It was one of those old buildings that looked charming from the outside. Brick facade, large windows, a wooden sign that creaked in the wind. Inside it smelled like paper and dust, and something faintly floral that might have been incense or old perfume. The lights were still on, but the closed sign hung in the window. Caleb hesitated, then knocked. No answer. He tried the door. Unlocked. He stepped inside. "Hello?" The store was narrow and deep, with tall shelves that created a maze of aisles. Classical music played softly from a speaker somewhere in the back. Caleb walked further in, past the front counter, past the display table stacked with staff recommendations. "Seline, back here." Her voice came from the far corner, near the poetry section. Caleb followed it, winding through the shelves until he found her. She was sitting on the floor with her back against a bookcase, one leg stretched out, the other bent. She had a notebook open in her lap and a pen in her hand, but she wasn't writing. She looked up when he approached, and for a second something unguarded flickered across her face. Surprise, maybe, or embarrassment. "Caleb," she said. Not a question, just his name, like she was testing it out. "Hey!" He shoved his hands in his pockets. "Dylan asked me to check in, make sure you were okay." Her expression shifted, a flash of irritation. "Of course he did." "I can leave if you want." "No." She closed the notebook, set it aside. "It's fine. I'm fine." She didn't look fine. She looked exhausted. Her hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, strands falling around her face. She wore a gray sweater that was too big for her, sleeves pushed up past her elbows. There were shadows under her eyes. Caleb stayed where he was, not sure what to do. "Do you, need help with anything?" She laughed, short and humorless. "Dylan sent you to help me stock shelves?" "I don't know what he sent me to do, honestly." She looked at him for a long moment and something in her face softened. "He worries." "Yeah." "He doesn't need to." "I'll let him know." She smiled a little at that. It didn't quite reach her eyes, but it was something. "You don't have to babysit me, Caleb. I'm just working late. It happens." "Okay." He should have left then. He knew he should have left, but instead he found himself asking, "What are you working on?" She glanced at the notebook. "Nothing, just writing." "Writing what?" "Why do you care?" "I don't know." He shifted his weight. "I used to write, kind of." That got her attention. She tilted her head, studying him. "Used to." "Still do, sometimes. Not as much as I want to." "Why not?" He shrugged. "Life gets in the way." "That's a cop-out." "Probably." She almost smiled again. "What do you write?" "Stories, fiction, nothing anyone would want to read." "How do you know?" "Because I've never finished one." She nodded slowly, like that made sense to her. "I get that." "Do you write?" "Sometimes. Poetry mostly. Bad poetry." She said it like a confession. "I doubt it's bad." "You haven't read it." "Fair." They fell into silence. It wasn't uncomfortable exactly, but it felt weighted, like there was more being said than either of them was actually saying. Then Seline shifted, and something in her posture changed. She winced. "You okay?" Caleb asked. "Yeah, just..." She reached up, pressed her hand to her left shoulder. "Old injury. Acts up sometimes." "From what?" "Doesn't matter." "Does it hurt?" "Only when I move." She said it like a joke, but her jaw was tight. Caleb hesitated. "I know some basic massage stuff, physical therapy type things. I could..." "No." She said it fast. Too fast. "Okay." She looked away. Then, quieter. "Sorry, I just..." I don't like people touching me. That's fine. You don't have to explain. She met his eyes again, and this time there was something raw there, something that made his chest tighten. It's from the marriage, she said. He didn't hit me, if that's what you're thinking, but he wasn't careful. He didn't care if things hurt. Caleb didn't know what to say to that, so he just nodded. I'm not trying to make it weird, she added. I just thought you should know. You're not making it weird. Dylan doesn't know. About the shoulder, I mean. He knows the marriage was bad, but not specifics. I won't say anything. I know. She took a breath, then looked at him again. If you still want to help, I won't stop you. But if I tell you to stop, you stop. Of course. She stood, slow and stiff, and Caleb followed her over to the front counter where there was more space. She sat on the stool, turned so her back was to him, and pulled her sweater down off one shoulder. Caleb's mouth went dry. He stepped closer, carefully, like approaching something fragile. Tell me if it's too much, he said. I will. He placed his hands on her shoulder, gentle, barely any pressure. Her skin was warm. She tensed immediately. Sorry, he said. No, it's okay. Keep going. He worked slowly, testing what she could handle. His fingers found the knot of muscle tight and hard beneath the skin. He pressed, just enough, and she exhaled sharply. Too much? No, it's good. He kept going. His thumbs traced the line of her shoulder blade, applying steady pressure. She didn't speak. Neither did he. The only sounds were the music playing low in the background and the rain that had started outside, tapping against the windows. He'd never touched anyone like this before, not in a way that felt like it mattered. And maybe that was the problem. It shouldn't have mattered. This was supposed to be clinical, helpful, a favor for a friend's sister who was in pain. But it didn't feel clinical. It felt intimate in a way that made his heart beat too fast. Her breathing had slowed, deepened. He could feel the tension leaving her body little by little, and that felt like trust, which was a dangerous thing to be given. Caleb, she said quietly. Yeah? Thank you. You don't have to thank me. I know. He kept working, but his thoughts were spinning. This was Dylan's sister, his best friend's older sister, the one who'd just escaped a bad marriage, the one who didn't like being touched. And here he was, standing behind her with his hands on her bare skin, feeling something he absolutely should not be feeling. When he finally stepped back, she stayed still for a moment, then pulled her sweater back up and turned to face him. Better? He asked. Much. She looked at him, and her expression was strange. Soft, but guarded, like she was trying to decide something. Good. You're good at that. I just know a few tricks. Still, the silence stretched again, and this time it felt heavier, charged. I should go, Caleb said. Okay. He didn't move. Neither did she. Caleb, the lights flickered. They both looked up. Then the power went out. The store plunged into darkness, and outside the rain picked up, hammering the roof like it meant to break through. Somewhere in the distance, a transformer blew with a muffled crack. Shit, Seline muttered. Caleb pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight. The pale glow lit her face from below, stark and ghostly. Does this happen a lot? He asked. More than it should. She stood steadier now. I should close up. I'll help. You don't have to. I know. They moved through the store together, Caleb holding the light, while Seline checked the back door, the windows, the register. The storm outside was getting worse, wind rattling the old glass panes. When did you last eat? Caleb asked. She paused. Lunch, maybe? Seline, I'm fine. There's a diner 2 blocks over. It'll be closed. Everything closes early on Thursdays. Then we could go to my place. I've got leftover pasta. She looked at him and he realized what that sounded like. Not like that, he said quickly. I just mean you shouldn't go home on an empty stomach. And the storm's only getting worse. My apartment's closer than yours. She hesitated. Dylan would kill me if I let you pass out from low blood sugar, Caleb added. That got a real smile out of her. Small, but real. Fine, but only because I don't want to be responsible for your death. Appreciate it? They locked up the store and stepped out into the rain. It was the kind of downpour that soaked through clothes in seconds. Caleb pulled his jacket over his head, useless, and Seline just walked through it like she didn't care. By the time they reached his building 3 blocks away, they were both drenched. His apartment was small. 1 bedroom, a living room that doubled as his office, a kitchen barely big enough to turn around in. It was cluttered with books, empty coffee mugs, a desk buried under notebooks and cables. Not impressive. But it was warm, and it was dry, and right now that was enough. Here. He grabbed a towel from the bathroom, handed it to her. I'll get the food started. She dried her face, her hair, then stood awkwardly in the middle of his living room like she wasn't sure what to do with herself. You can sit, Caleb said. I'm not going to bite. She sat on the couch, and he went to the kitchen, reheating the pasta and trying very hard not to think about the fact that Seline Hart was in his apartment, wet and tired and more real than she'd ever been before. When the food was ready, he brought it over, 2 bowls and 2 forks. They ate in silence at first, the sound of the rain filling the gaps. This is good, she said eventually. It's jarred sauce and boxed pasta. Still, he smiled. Low bar. Maybe. They finished eating, and Caleb took the bowls back to the kitchen. When he returned, Seline was looking at the notebooks on his desk. Can I? She asked. They're just drafts, nothing special. Can I? She asked again. He nodded. She picked one up, opened it, started reading. Caleb sat in the chair across from her, watching her face, trying to gauge her reaction. She didn't give much away. Just turned the pages slowly, her eyes moving over his handwriting, his scratched-out lines, his half-formed ideas. These are good, she said finally. You don't have to say that. I'm not just saying it. She looked up. Why don't you finish them? I don't know. Fear, maybe. Of what? That they won't be good enough. That I'll put in all that work and it'll still be mediocre. She nodded. I know that feeling. Yeah? Yeah. She closed the notebook, set it down carefully. I used to write a lot before I got married, after, I don't know. It felt like I didn't have anything left to say, like someone had taken that part of me and I couldn't get it back. Do you think you will get it back? I don't know. Maybe. Some days I think I'm starting to. Other days it feels like I'm kidding myself. For what it's worth, Caleb said, I think you should keep trying. She looked at him, really looked at him, and something shifted in the air between them. Something that had been building all night finally settled into place, undeniable. Caleb, she said quietly. Yeah? Why did you really come to the bookstore tonight? He could have lied. Could have said it was just because Dylan asked. But sitting here in the dim light of his apartment with the storm raging outside, lying felt impossible. I don't know, he said. I think I just wanted to see you. She didn't respond right away, just held his gaze, and the silence stretched, taut and fragile. That's a problem, she said finally. I know. Dylan, I know. I'm a mess, Caleb. I'm still trying to figure out who I am after everything that happened. I can't be what you... I'm not asking you to be anything. Then what are you asking? Nothing. I don't know. He stopped, searched for the words. I just think you're the first person I've met in a long time who actually gets it. The fear, the feeling like you're supposed to be something more than you are. And I know that's selfish, and I know this is complicated, but sitting here with you feels like the first real thing I've done in months. She stood abruptly, and for a second he thought she was going to leave. But she didn't. She just crossed the room, sat beside him on the couch, close enough that their knees almost touched. You don't know me, she said. I want to. You don't know what you're asking for. Maybe not, but I know what I'm feeling right now. She closed her eyes, took a breath. When she opened them again, they were bright, raw. This can't happen, Caleb. I know. Dylan would lose his mind. I know. And I'm not ready for anything. I don't even know if I'll ever be ready. I know. Then why are you still looking at me like that? Because I can't help it. And then she kissed him. It wasn't planned. It wasn't smooth. It was sudden and desperate and tasted like fear and rain and something neither of them could name. Caleb froze for half a second, his brain short-circuiting, and then he kissed her back, his hand coming up to her face, gentle despite the urgency in the way she pressed against him. When they finally pulled apart, both breathing hard, she looked terrified. "I shouldn't have done that," she said. "Do you regret it?" "I don't know. Yes. No. I don't know. Seline, I need to go." "The storm. I don't care." She stood, grabbed her bag, headed for the door. Caleb followed, caught her wrist gently. "Wait. Just wait. We don't have to figure this out tonight, but don't leave like this." She looked at him, and the fear in her eyes was almost unbearable. "What are we doing, Caleb?" "I don't know." "That's not good enough." "I know." She pulled her hand free, but she didn't leave. Just stood there, shaking slightly, her hair still damp, her eyes too bright. "I spent 2 years in a marriage where I was never enough," she said quietly. "Where I twisted myself into shapes I didn't recognize just to make someone else happy. And it still wasn't enough. I can't do that again. I can't let someone get close just to realize I'm not worth the effort. You are worth the effort. You don't know that. I know you're standing in my apartment at 10 o'clock at night during a storm having a panic attack because you kissed someone you actually wanted to kiss. That's not nothing, Seline. That's something." She laughed, sharp and broken. "You make it sound simple." "It is simple. It's terrifying, but it's simple." "And Dylan?" Caleb's stomach dropped. "I don't know." "That's what I thought." She opened the door, and the rain poured in, cold and relentless. She stepped out into it without looking back. Caleb watched her go, his heart hammering, his mind racing. He should have stopped her, should have said something better, something that would have made her stay. But the words wouldn't come, and then she was gone, swallowed by the storm in the dark. He closed the door, leaned against it, and tried to catch his breath. His phone buzzed. "Dylan. Did you check on Seline?" Caleb stared at the message for a long time. Then he typed back, "Yeah, she's fine." He set the phone down, walked back to the couch, and sank into it, his head in his hands. This was a mistake. He knew it was a mistake. Dylan would never forgive him. Seline would push him away. And he'd be left with nothing but the memory of a kiss that should never have happened. But for those few seconds when her lips had been on his, he'd felt more alive than he had in years. And that was the real problem. Because now that he knew what it felt like, he didn't think he could go back to pretending he didn't. Caleb didn't sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment, every word, every second of that kiss until it became something abstract and unreal. By the time morning light started creeping through his blinds, he'd convinced himself it had been a mistake. Not the kiss itself, that had felt more right than anything in recent memory, but everything around it, the timing, the circumstances. The fact that Dylan's name sat between them like a landmine, neither of them knew how to diffuse. He got up, made coffee he didn't drink, and tried to work. The code on his screen blurred into meaningless symbols. He closed the laptop, opened a notebook, tried to write. Nothing came. His mind kept circling back to Seline standing in his doorway, rain-soaked and terrified, saying she couldn't do this, saying she wasn't worth the effort. She was wrong about that. He knew she was wrong. But knowing it and convincing her were two different things. Around noon, his phone buzzed. "Dylan. How was she?" Caleb stared at the message. His thumb hovered over the keyboard. Finally, he typed, "Seemed okay. Tired. Working too much, probably." Dylan. "Yeah. She does that. Thanks for checking, man." Caleb. "No problem." He set the phone down and felt sick. The next 3 days passed in a strange, suspended state. Caleb went through the motions, answered emails, fixed bugs in client code, took his mom's call when she asked if he was eating properly. But his attention was elsewhere. He kept thinking about the bookstore, about Seline sitting on the floor with her notebook, about the way she'd looked at him when he'd said he wanted to know her. He didn't text her, didn't go by the bookstore. He told himself he was giving her space, but really he was just a coward. Because if she told him it had been a mistake, that she didn't want to see him again, he didn't know what he'd do with that. On Sunday morning, she texted him, "Seline, can we talk?" His heart stopped. "Caleb, when?" Seline, "Today. Not at my place or yours, somewhere neutral." Caleb, "The park by the river?" Seline, 1 p.m. He got there early, found a bench near the water where the trees formed a partial canopy overhead. The park was mostly empty, Just a couple walking a dog in the distance and a kid throwing rocks into the river. The sky was overcast, threatening rain again, but it held off. Seline arrived exactly at 1. She was wearing jeans and an oversized denim jacket, her hair down, and she looked like she hadn't slept much either. She sat on the far end of the bench, leaving space between them. "Hi," she said. "Hi." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The river moved past, slow and brown, carrying leaves and debris from the storm. "I've been thinking," Seline said finally, "about what happened." "Yeah, me too. I shouldn't have kissed you." Caleb's chest tightened. "Okay." "Not because I didn't want to," she added quickly. "I did. That's the problem. I wanted to, and I did it without thinking about what it would mean. For you, for me, for Dylan." "Seline, let me finish." She took a breath. "I'm not good at this, Caleb. Relationships, honesty, any of it. I spent so long being told what I felt didn't matter, and I learned to bury it. And now I'm trying to unlearn that, but it's hard. And then you show up and you're kind and you actually listen when I talk, and it scares the hell out of me because I don't know how to trust that. I don't know how to trust you won't turn into someone else once you really know me." "I'm not him," Caleb said quietly. "I'm not your ex." "I know, logically I know that, but knowing something and believing it are different things. So what do you want to do?" She looked at him, and her eyes were tired but steady. "I want to be honest. I want to stop hiding from everything that feels hard. And I think that means admitting that I felt something that night. Something I haven't felt in a long time. Maybe something I've never felt." Caleb's pulse quickened. "I felt it too. But Dylan, I know. He's your best friend. I know. And he's my brother, and he's protective. And if we—" She trailed off, shook her head. "I don't even know what this is. I don't know what we're doing." "Neither do I," Caleb admitted. "But I know I haven't stopped thinking about you. And I know that when you left my apartment, it felt like something important walked out the door. And I don't want to live my whole life wondering what would have happened if I'd been brave enough to try." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "What if it goes badly? What if it doesn't?" "That's not an answer." "I don't have a better one." She almost smiled. "You're a terrible salesman. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm just telling you the truth." She pulled her knees up, wrapped her arms around them. "The truth is I'm terrified. Of this. Of you. Of myself. I don't know if I'm ready." "You don't have to be ready. You just have to be willing." "And Dylan?" Caleb exhaled slowly. "I don't know. That part, I don't know how to handle that part." "Neither do I." They sat in silence, the weight of it pressing down. The problem with Dylan wasn't just that he was protective. It was that he mattered, to both of them. And whatever happened next would ripple outward in ways they couldn't predict. "I don't want to lie to him," Seline said finally. "I've had enough of lying, to myself, to other people. I'm done with that." "So what do we do?" "I don't know." She looked at him. "But I don't think we can figure it out if we're not honest with each other first. About what this is. About what we want." "What do you want?" Caleb asked. She took a breath. "I want to see where this goes, but slowly, carefully. I want to know you're not going to bolt when things get complicated, because they will. They already are. I'm not going to bolt. You say that now." "I mean it." She held his gaze, searching for something. Then she nodded, just slightly. "Okay. Okay? Okay. But we tell Dylan. Not today. Not while he's still out of town. But when he gets back. We tell him." "What do we tell him? That we kissed once and now we're what? Dating? Seeing each other? I don't even know what to call this." "Neither do I. But we tell him the truth. That something's happening between us and we're not sure what it is yet, but we want to find out." "He's going to lose his mind." "Probably. He might not speak to me again." "He will. Eventually." She didn't sound entirely convinced. "Dylan's loyal, sometimes to a fault, but he loves you, and he loves me. He'll come around." "And if he doesn't?" Seline was quiet. Then we deal with that when it happens." Caleb wanted to believe her, wanted to believe it could be that simple, but something in his gut told him it wouldn't be. That once Dylan knew, everything would change, and not in the way they hoped. But sitting here with Seline, with the river moving past and the sky holding its breath, he couldn't bring himself to walk away. "When does Dylan get back?" he asked. "Tomorrow night, late." "So we have a day." "To do what?" "To figure out what we're going to say." She shook her head. "I don't think we can plan it. The more we rehearse, the less real it'll sound." "Then what?" "We just tell him. No preamble, no justifications, just the truth." Caleb rubbed his face. "This is a terrible idea." "Probably. But you still want to do it." "I want to stop being afraid of living," she said. "And that means taking risks, even stupid ones." He looked at her, really looked at her, and saw someone who was still figuring out how to stand upright after being knocked down. Someone who was choosing to be brave even though it terrified her, and that made him want to be brave too. "Okay," he said. "We tell him." "Okay." They sat for a while longer, not touching, just existing in the same space. Eventually, Seline stood, pulled her jacket tighter around herself. "I should go," she said. "I have work in an hour." "Seline," she turned back. "For what it's worth," Caleb said, "I think you're worth all the effort in the world, and I'm going to keep thinking that even when you don't believe it yourself." Her expression cracked, just slightly. "Don't make promises you can't keep." "I'm not." She didn't respond, just gave him one last look, then walked away, disappearing into the trees. Caleb sat alone on his bench for another 20 minutes, trying to steady himself. Then he went home, opened his laptop, and tried to write. For the first time in weeks, the words came. Not easily and not perfectly, but they came. He wrote about fear and courage and the strange, terrible feeling of standing on the edge of something that could either destroy you or save you. He wrote until his hands cramped and his eyes burned, and when he finally stopped, he realized he'd written 10 pages without stopping. It wasn't good. Half of it was rambling, and the other half was too raw to show anyone. But it was something. It was a start. The next day dragged. Caleb worked, ate, tried to distract himself. His phone stayed quiet. Around 6, Dylan texted. "Dylan, just crossed state line. Be home around 9. Want to grab a beer?" Caleb stared at the message. He should say no. Should wait until they told him. But avoiding Dylan now would only make things worse. Caleb. "Sure. Your place or mine?" Dylan. "Mine. I'll text when I'm home." Caleb spent the next 3 hours in a low-grade panic. He considered texting Seline, asking if she wanted to be there when they told Dylan, but decided against it. She'd said tomorrow. They'd agreed. Rushing it would only make it messier. At 9:15, his phone buzzed. "Dylan. Home. Come over whenever." Caleb grabbed his jacket and walked the 8 blocks to Dylan's house. It was a rental, small and slightly run down, with a porch that sagged in the middle and gutters that needed cleaning. Dylan opened the door before Caleb could knock, grinning wide. "Man, that job was brutal," Dylan said, clapping Caleb on the shoulder as he came inside. 4 12-hour days in a row, I think I lost feeling in my back." "Sounds rough." "Yeah, but the money's good. Want a beer?" "Sure." They settled in the living room, which was cluttered with tools, guitar cases, and empty takeout containers. Dylan cracked open 2 beers, handed one to Caleb, and collapsed onto the couch with a groan. "So," Dylan said. "What'd I miss?" "Not much. Millridge in September is exactly as thrilling as you'd expect." "You check on Seline like I asked?" Caleb's stomach clenched. "Yeah. She was fine. Good. She's been weird lately, distant. I don't know if it's the divorce stuff or just her being her, but I worry. She seems like she's handling things okay." "Yeah, maybe." Dylan took a long drink. "Thanks for doing that, by the way. I know it's not exactly your responsibility." "It's fine." Dylan looked at him, and for a second something sharp flickered in his expression. "You didn't, get weird with her, did you?" Caleb's throat went dry. "What? I mean, you didn't hit on her or anything." "Jesus, Dylan, no." Okay, I'm just asking. She's vulnerable right now, and she's pretty. I know guys notice that." "I wasn't..." Caleb stopped, took a breath. "I wasn't weird. I just checked in like you asked." Dylan studied him for a moment longer, then nodded. "All right, good. Because if some asshole tried to take advantage while she's going through all this, I'd probably kill him." The words landed like a punch. Caleb forced himself to stay calm, to meet Dylan's eyes, to act like everything was normal. "She's your sister," Caleb said. "I get it." "Yeah, I mean, you have a little sister. You'd do the same thing." "I would." Dylan seemed satisfied. He leaned back, changed the subject, started talking about the construction job, the guys on the crew, a prank someone had pulled involving a bucket of joint compound. Caleb listened, responded when appropriate, and felt like a fraud the entire time. He left an hour later, claiming exhaustion, and walked home through streets that suddenly felt too narrow, too familiar, too suffocating. When he got back to his apartment, he texted Seline. "Caleb, just had a beer with Dylan. He asked if I was weird with you. I said no." Her response came 10 minutes later. "Seline, was he suspicious?" Caleb, "I don't think so, but he made it pretty clear what he'd do if someone tried something." Seline, "Great." Caleb, "We're still telling him tomorrow?" Seline, "Yes, we have to. The longer we wait, the worse it gets." Caleb, "Okay." Seline, "Are you having second thoughts?" He wanted to say yes, wanted to tell her this was too much, too complicated, too likely to blow up in their faces, but instead he typed, "No." "Are you?" Seline, "Every 5 minutes, but I'm still doing it." Caleb, "Me too." Seline, "Tomorrow night, 7 p.m., my place. I'll ask Dylan to come over." Caleb, "You're sure?" Seline, "No, but I'm doing it anyway." Caleb set the phone down and tried to sleep. It didn't come easily. The next day crawled by in agonizing slow motion. Caleb couldn't focus on work, couldn't write, couldn't do anything but watch the clock and feel his anxiety ratchet higher with every passing hour. At 6:30, he left his apartment and started walking towards Seline's. Her place was above the bookstore, accessed by a narrow staircase on the side of the building. He climbed the steps, knocked. She opened the door immediately like she'd been waiting. "Hey," she said. "Hey." She looked pale. Steady, but pale. "Dylan's on his way. He'll be here in about 10 minutes. "Okay." She stepped aside, let him in. The apartment was small and sparsely furnished, a couch, a chair, a bookshelf overflowing with paperbacks. Everything was tidy, but felt temporary, like she hadn't fully committed to living here. "You want something to drink?" she asked. "I'm good." They stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, both too nervous to sit. "How do you want to do this?" Caleb asked. "I don't know. I've been rehearsing all day and everything sounds wrong." "We just tell him, like you said, no preamble." "Right. And if he freaks out, he will." "Then we deal with it." She nodded, but she looked like she might be sick. A knock on the door made them both jump. Seline took a breath, crossed the room, opened the door. Dylan stood on the landing, grinning. "Hey, what's with the cryptic text? You said it was important." "It is. Come in." He stepped inside, then stopped when he saw Caleb. His grin faltered. "Oh. Hey, man, didn't know you'd be here." "Yeah," Caleb said. His voice sounded strange in his own ears. "Seline asked me to come." Dylan looked between them, and something shifted in his expression. The easy warmth disappeared, replaced by wariness. "What's going on?" Seline closed the door, stayed standing. "We need to talk to you." "Okay." Dylan's eyes narrowed. "About what?" "About us," Seline said. "Caleb and me." The silence that followed was suffocating. Dylan's face went blank. Then something flickered there, confusion, disbelief, anger, all tangled together. "What about you?" "Something's happening between us," Seline said. "We're not sure what it is yet, but we didn't want to hide it from you." Dylan stared at her, then at Caleb, then back at her. "Something's happening. What does that mean?" "It means we've spent time together," Caleb said. "And we realize there's a connection." "A connection?" Dylan's voice was flat. "You're fucking kidding me." "Dylan, no, don't Dylan me." He turned to Caleb, and the look on his face was something Caleb had never seen before. "How long?" "It's not like that," Caleb said. "Nothing's happened. Not really. We just... How long have you been lying to me?" "I haven't been lying." "Bullshit. I asked you to check on her. That was it. And now you're telling me something's happening?" "It wasn't planned," Seline said. "Neither of us expected this." "Expected what?" "You've known each other for 5 minutes." I've known him since we were kids, Dylan. It's not like he's a stranger. You barely talked before now. And suddenly there's a connection. Dylan's voice was rising. What? Did you sleep with him? No, Seline said sharply. And that's not your business, even if I did. Like hell it's not. He's my best friend. You're my sister. That makes it my business. I'm not a kid, Dylan. I don't need you to approve my choices. This isn't about approval. This is about... He gestured wildly between them. This is messed up. You're messed up, Seline. You just got out of a nightmare marriage and you're already jumping into something with the first guy who shows you attention? Seline flinched like she'd been slapped. Don't talk to her like that, Caleb said, his voice hard. Dylan turned on him. You don't get to defend her. You don't get to act like you're doing the right thing here. You know what she's been through. You know she's vulnerable, and you took advantage of that. I didn't take advantage of anyone. Then what the hell is this? It's two people trying to figure out if there's something real between them, Caleb said. That's it. We're not sneaking around. We're not lying. We're telling you because we care about you and we don't want to hurt you. Too late. Dylan, Seline started. No, you know what? I don't want to hear it. He looked at Caleb and there was something broken in his eyes. I trusted you. With everything. And you're really going to stand here and tell me you have feelings for my sister? Yes. Then you're not the person I thought you were. The words hit like a physical blow. Caleb opened his mouth, closed it, didn't know what to say. Dylan shook his head, turned toward the door. I need to get out of here. Dylan, wait, Seline said. Please, let's just talk about this. There's nothing to talk about. Yes, there is. You're upset. I get it. But running away doesn't solve anything. You think I'm running? Dylan laughed, bitter and sharp. You're the one who ran, Seline. You ran away from your marriage. You ran back here. And now you're running into something with Caleb because you're too scared to deal with your own shit. Her face went white. That's enough, Caleb said. Is it? Dylan turned back to him. Because I'm just getting started. You want to know what I think? I think you're using her. I think you're bored and lonely and she's convenient. And when you figure out she's more work than you bargained for, you'll bail, and I'll be the one picking up the pieces. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? You've been stuck in this town for how long? Doing nothing, going nowhere, and now suddenly you have feelings? Give me a break. Dylan, stop it, Seline said, her voice shaking. You're being cruel. I'm being honest. Someone has to be. No. You're being a bully, and you're doing it because you're scared. Scared of what? That I don't need you the way you think I do. That I can make my own choices even if they're mistakes. That I might actually be okay without you hovering over me like I'm about to break. Dylan stared at her, and for a moment the anger drained out of him, replaced by something raw and hurt. I'm trying to protect you. I don't need protecting, not from this, not from him. You don't know that. You're right, I don't. But it's my risk to take, not yours. Dylan looked between them one more time. Then he shook his head, yanked open the door, and walked out. The door slammed behind him, rattling the frame. The silence that followed was deafening. Seline stood frozen, her arms wrapped around herself. Caleb took a step toward her, then stopped, not sure if she wanted him close. Seline, don't. Her voice was thin, tight. Don't say it's going to be okay. Don't tell me he'll come around. Just don't. Okay. She sank onto the couch, dropped her head into her hands. That was worse than I thought it would be. Yeah. He hates me. He doesn't hate you. He's hurt. Same thing right now. Caleb sat beside her, keeping a careful distance. He'll cool off. He just needs time. And if he doesn't, then we deal with it. She looked at him, and her eyes were red-rimmed but dry. Are you sure about this? About us? Because we just lost my brother over something that might not even be real. It's real, Caleb said. I don't know what it's going to turn into. But what I feel when I'm with you, that's real. What if it's not enough? Then at least we tried. She was quiet for a long time. Then, finally, she leaned into him, just slightly, and he put his arm around her. They sat like that in the dim light of her apartment, two people who just burned a bridge and weren't sure if they'd ever get to cross back. Outside, the night had turned cold. Caleb could hear the wind rattling the windows, could feel Seline trembling slightly against his side even though the room wasn't that cold. She wasn't crying. She just sat there, rigid and silent, like she was trying to hold herself together by sheer force of will. "You should go," she said finally. "I don't want to leave you like this. I need to be alone." "Seline, please." She pulled away from him, stood up, wrapped her arms around herself. "I just need to think, to process. And I can't do that with you here." Caleb stood too, felt the weight of everything unsaid pressing down between them. "Okay, but will you call me? If you need to talk." "Maybe, I don't know. Promise me you won't do anything stupid." That got a bitter laugh out of her. "Like what?" "I already did the stupid thing. This whole situation is stupid." "It's not stupid." "Then what is it?" "Because right now it feels like we just destroyed my relationship with my brother for something that might fall apart in a week." "It won't." "You don't know that." "No, but I'm willing to find out." She looked at him, and her expression was so raw it hurt to see. "What if I'm not?" The question hung in the air between them, sharp and terrible. "Then tell me now," Caleb said quietly. "If you want to walk away, if you think this was a mistake, tell me. I'll leave, and we'll pretend it never happened." She didn't answer right away, just stood there chewing her bottom lip, her eyes darting around the room like she was looking for an escape route. "I don't know what I want," she said finally. "I thought I did. But seeing Dylan like that, hearing him say those things, maybe he's right. Maybe I am just running from one thing into another without thinking. Or maybe you're finally letting yourself want something. That's easy for you to say. You didn't just watch your brother look at you like you're a stranger." "No, but I watched my best friend walk out on me because I told him the truth. That's not nothing, Seline." She closed her eyes, took a shaky breath. "I know. I'm sorry. I need time to think, to figure out what I'm doing." "How much time?" "I don't know. A day? A week?" "I don't know, Caleb." Her voice cracked. "I don't have answers right now. I just have a headache and a brother who hates me and a mess I don't know how to clean up." Caleb wanted to argue, wanted to tell her she was wrong, that they could fix this. But the exhaustion in her voice stopped him. She was right. They both needed space to process what had just happened. "Okay," he said. "Take your time. But don't shut me out completely. Please." "I won't." "Promise?" "I promise." He moved toward the door, stopped with his hand on the knob. "For what it's worth, I don't think this was a mistake. And I don't think Dylan hates you. He's just scared." "Maybe. Call me. When you're ready." "I will." He left, walking down the narrow stairs and out into the cold night. The streets were empty, the shops all closed, the whole town locked up tight like it was holding its breath. Caleb walked home slowly, his mind spinning, his chest tight with something that felt like grief. When he got back to his apartment, he found 3 missed calls from Dylan and a series of texts. "Dylan, I can't believe you." "Dylan, how long has this been going on?" "Dylan, don't bother answering. I don't want to hear it." Caleb stared at the messages, then typed out a response he knew wouldn't help but send anyway. "Caleb, nothing's been going on. We told you the truth. I'm sorry you're hurt, but we didn't do this to hurt you." The response came back almost immediately. "Dylan, bullshit. You knew how I'd react and you did it anyway." "Caleb, what were we supposed to do? Hide it from you?" "Dylan, you were supposed to not go there in the first place." "Caleb, it doesn't work like that." "Dylan, it should." "Caleb, I'm sorry." "Dylan, yeah, well, sorry doesn't fix this." Caleb set the phone down, resisted the urge to throw it across the room. Instead, he opened his laptop and tried to work. The code on the screen made no sense. He closed it, tried to write. Nothing came. His brain was stuck in a loop, replaying Dylan's words over and over. "You're not the person I thought you were." Maybe Dylan was right. Maybe he wasn't. The next 3 days were among the worst of Caleb's life. He went through the motions, answered emails, fixed bugs, ate meals he didn't taste. But it all felt hollow. Seline didn't call, didn't text, and Dylan was radio silent. Caleb checked his phone obsessively, started drafting messages he never sent, and felt like he was slowly coming apart at the seams. On the 4th day, his mom called. "Caleb, honey, are you okay? You sound terrible." "I'm fine, Mom." You're not fine. What happened? He considered lying, but he was too tired. Dylan and I had a fight, a bad one. Oh no, what about? It's complicated. Is it about a girl? Caleb closed his eyes. Yeah, his mom sighed. Let me guess. You both like the same person. Not exactly. It's his sister. There was a long pause. Seline. Yeah. Oh, Caleb. I know. Does she feel the same way about you? I think so. Maybe. I don't know anymore. And Dylan's upset. That's putting it mildly. His mom was quiet for a moment, then, you know, when your father and I first started dating, my brother hated him. Thought he wasn't good enough for me. Wouldn't speak to either of us for months. What changed? Time. And the realization that I was going to be with your dad whether he liked it or not. Eventually, he had to choose between being stubborn and being part of my life. He chose my life. Dylan's not going to come around. You don't know that. Mom, you didn't see his face. He looked at me like I'd betrayed him. Because in his mind you did. But that doesn't mean he'll feel that way forever. Give him time, and more importantly, give yourself permission to want what you want. You can't live your life avoiding things just because they might upset someone else. Even if that someone is my best friend. Even then. Especially then. After they hung up, Caleb sat with those words, turning them over in his mind. He wanted to believe her. Wanted to think that Dylan would eventually see reason, that Seline would call, that everything would somehow work itself out. But the silence felt louder every day, and the doubt was starting to creep in. On the 5th day, Caleb was at the grocery store when he saw Dylan. He was in the produce section, picking through apples with the kind of intense focus people use when they're trying very hard to ignore someone. Caleb debated turning around, leaving, avoiding the confrontation, but that felt cowardly, so he walked over. Hey, Caleb said. Dylan didn't look up. Hey, can we talk? I'm busy. Dylan, come on. I said I'm busy. Caleb stood there for a moment, unsure what to do. Then Dylan straightened up, finally looked at him, and the expression on his face was cold. What do you want me to say, Caleb? That it's fine? That I'm over it? I'm not. I'm not asking you to be over it. I'm just asking you to listen. I listened. At Celine's apartment, and I didn't like what I heard. Then let me explain. There's nothing to explain. You want to date my sister? I think it's a bad idea. End of story. It's not that simple. It is for me. Dylan grabbed a bag of apples, tossed them in his cart. Look, you do what you want, but don't expect me to be okay with it, and don't expect things to go back to normal between us. So that's it? We're just done? I don't know. Maybe. Dylan's jaw tightened. I need space, all right? From you, from Seline, from all of this. I can't think when everyone's in my face trying to make me understand. How much space? As much as I need. Dylan, I have to go. He walked away before Caleb could say anything else, disappearing down the cereal aisle without looking back. Caleb stood there in produce, holding a box of granola bars he didn't remember picking up, and felt something crack inside him. That evening, Seline finally called. Hey, she said when he answered. Her voice sounded small. Hey. Sorry it took me so long to reach out. I've been processing. Yeah, me too. Have you talked to Dylan? Briefly, at the store. He said he needs space. He told me the same thing. Won't return my calls, won't answer the door. I think he's genuinely done with both of us right now. Caleb sat down on his couch, suddenly exhausted. What do we do? I don't know. Wait, I guess. Hope he cools off. And if he doesn't? She was quiet for a moment, then, I've been thinking about that. About what happens if he never forgives us. And I realized something. What? I can't keep living my life trying to make other people comfortable. I did that in my marriage. Let someone else's anger and disappointment dictate every choice I made. And it nearly destroyed me. I can't do it again, not even for Dylan. So what are you saying? I'm saying I want to try. With you. With us. Whatever this is. I want to see where it goes, even if it's messy, even if it's hard. Because the alternative is giving up before we even start. and I'm tired of giving up. Caleb's chest tightened. Are you sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. What about Dylan? I love my brother, but he doesn't get to decide who I care about. And if he can't accept that, then I don't know. We'll figure it out. But I'm not walking away from you just because he's mad. Something loosened in Caleb's chest, something that had been wound tight for days. I'm not walking away either. Good. So what now? Now we go on a real date. Not in my apartment, not after a crisis. Just a normal date where we actually get to know each other without everything falling apart. Caleb smiled despite everything. When? Tomorrow night. There's a diner 2 towns over. No one from Millridge goes there. We can actually talk without worrying about who sees us. Sounds good. 7? I'll pick you up. Okay? She paused. Caleb? Yeah? Thank you for not running. I told you I wouldn't. I know, but a lot of people say that and don't mean it. You meant it. I did. After they hung up, Caleb sat in the quiet of his apartment and let himself feel something other than dread for the first time in days. It wasn't happiness exactly, more like relief, like he'd been holding his breath underwater and finally broke the surface. The next evening, he drove to Celine's apartment and knocked. She opened the door wearing jeans and a dark green sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. She looked nervous but also determined, and that combination did something to him. Hey, she said. Hey, you look great. Thanks. You too. They drove to the diner in comfortable silence, the radio playing low between them. The place was called Rosie's, a classic small-town establishment with red vinyl booths and a menu that hadn't changed in 30 years. They slid into a booth in the back corner, ordered coffee and burgers, and for the first time since this whole thing started, they weren't talking about Dylan or fear or what could go wrong. They were just talking. Tell me something I don't know about you, Seline said, wrapping her hands around her coffee mug. Like what? Anything. Something real. Caleb thought for a moment. I'm afraid of becoming my dad. Why? He had dreams too. Wanted to be a musician, got married young, had kids, and just let it go. Settled into a life that was fine, but not what he wanted. And I keep thinking, what if that's me? What if I wake up at 50 and realize I spent my whole life in Millridge doing work that doesn't matter, and all those stories I wanted to write are still just ideas in a notebook? Seline nodded slowly. That's a hard fear to carry. What about you? What are you afraid of? Besides everything? She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I'm afraid I don't know who I am anymore. I spent so long being what someone else wanted that I lost track of what I wanted. And now I'm trying to figure it out, but it's like learning a language I used to speak fluently and forgot. What did you want before everything changed? I wanted to write. Not professionally, just for myself. I wanted to travel, see places that weren't Millridge. I wanted to feel like my life was mine, not something that happened to me. She looked down at her coffee. And I wanted to fall in love. Real love, not the kind that hurts. Do you think that exists? I don't know. I want to believe it does. Me too. Their food came, and they ate slowly, talking between bites. She told him about the book she was reading, the poetry she'd been trying to write, the strange customers who came into the bookstore. He told her about the projects he was working on, the novel he'd started and abandoned 3 times, the way Millridge felt both comforting and suffocating at the same time. Why do you stay? She asked. If you hate it here so much? I don't hate it. I don't know. It's familiar, safe. And leaving feels like admitting failure. Failure at what? At becoming who I thought I'd be. That's not how it works. You don't fail at becoming yourself, you just become. Easy to say. Not easy to believe, trust me. I know. They finished eating, and Caleb paid the check over Celine's protests. They walked out into the parking lot, and the night was clear and cold, stars scattered across the sky like someone had spilled salt. I don't want to go home yet, Seline said. Neither do I. There's a park about 10 minutes from here. Want to walk? Sure. They drove to the park, left the car in the empty lot, and walked down a path that wound through trees and opened up to a small lake. The water was dark and still, reflecting the sky. They found a bench near the shore and sat down, close enough that their shoulders touched. "This is nice," Seline said. "Just being. Not worrying about who's watching or what they'll think." "Yeah. Do you think it'll always be like this? Hiding?" "I don't know. I hope not." "Me too." She leaned her head on his shoulder and he put his arm around her. "I miss this. Just feeling close to someone without it being complicated." "It's still complicated." "I know, but right now it doesn't feel that way." They sat in silence for a while, listening to the water lap against the shore, to the wind moving through the trees. Caleb felt something settle inside him, something that had been restless and uncertain for as long as he could remember. "Seline? Yeah? I'm glad we're doing this." "Me too. Even if it falls apart?" "Even then." He kissed the top of her head, and she turned to look at him. And then they were kissing for real, slow and careful, and nothing like the desperate kiss in his apartment. This one felt different, steadier, like they were both choosing it instead of being swept up in it. When they pulled apart, she smiled. "That was better." "Yeah?" "Less panic, more present." "Good." They stayed at the park for another hour, talking and not talking, just existing together in a way that felt easy despite everything that wasn't. Eventually, the cold got to be too much, and they drove back to Millridge. Caleb walked her to her door. "Thanks for tonight," she said. "I needed this." "Me too." "Same time next week?" "Definitely." She kissed him again, quick and sweet, then went inside. Caleb drove home feeling lighter than he had in days. But the lightness didn't last. 2 days later, Caleb was at his apartment when someone knocked. He opened the door expecting a delivery and found Dylan standing there instead. "Can I come in?" Dylan asked. "Yeah, of course." Dylan stepped inside and Caleb closed the door behind him. They stood awkwardly in the entryway, neither quite sure how to start. "I've been thinking," Dylan said finally, "about what you said, about Seline, about all of it." "Okay." "And I'm still not okay with it." Caleb's stomach dropped. "But," Dylan continued, "I don't want to lose you, or her, and I realize that's what's going to happen if I keep acting like this, so I'm trying to, I don't know, understand." "Dylan, let me finish." Dylan took a breath. "I don't like this. I don't like the idea of you two together. It feels wrong to me, and I don't know if that's ever going to change, but I also know Celine's a grown woman who can make her own choices, and you're my best friend, and maybe I've been too protective. Maybe I've been treating her like she's still the kid who needed me to fix things, when really she just needs me to trust her." "She does." "I know. That's what she told me. Called me yesterday, said if I didn't stop acting like an ass, she was going to stop trying. And she meant it. I could hear it in her voice." "She's stronger than you think." "I'm starting to realize that." Dylan rubbed his face. "Look, I'm not saying I'm fine with this. I'm not saying we're all going to be best friends and go on double dates or whatever, but I'm saying I'm willing to try. To not be an asshole about it. To see if maybe I was wrong. You weren't wrong to be upset." "No. But I was wrong about some other things. About you taking advantage, about her not knowing what she wants. She knows. And apparently she wants you." Caleb didn't know what to say to that. "Just don't hurt her," Dylan said, and his voice was rough. "I know you're going to say you won't, and I want to believe you, but if you do, I don't know if I'll be able to forgive you. I'm not going to hurt her." "Everyone says that." "I know, but I mean it." Dylan looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay. I believe you, or I'm trying to. That's all I can ask." "Yeah." Dylan moved toward the door, then stopped. "For what it's worth, I'm sorry. For some of the things I said, about you being bored, about her running. That wasn't fair." "It's okay." "It's not, but I'm working on it." "That's enough." Dylan left, and Caleb stood in the doorway watching him walk away. It wasn't a resolution, it wasn't forgiveness, but it was something. A crack in the wall. A possibility. He texted Seline. "Caleb, Dylan just came by." Seline. "And?" Caleb. "He's trying. It's not perfect, but it's something." Seline. "I know. He called me too. Said some things he needed to say." Caleb. "Good things?" Seline. "Honest things, which is better." Caleb. Does this mean we can stop hiding? Seline. I don't know, maybe. Let's take it slow. Caleb. How slow? Seline. Slow enough that we don't blow everything up again. Caleb. Fair. Seline. I'll see you this weekend? Caleb. Can't wait. That weekend, they went back to the diner. And the weekend after that. Slowly, carefully, they built something between them that felt real and fragile and worth protecting. Dylan didn't join them, didn't ask questions, but he stopped avoiding Caleb entirely. Started texting again, short messages about work or a funny thing that happened. And it wasn't the same as before, but it was a start. 3 weeks after their first real date, Caleb and Seline were walking through town when they ran into Dylan. It was early evening, the streets mostly empty, and there was a moment where all three of them froze, unsure what to do. Then Dylan nodded. Hey. Hey, Caleb said. Seline didn't say anything, just looked at her brother with something guarded in her expression. You two going somewhere? Dylan asked. Dinner, Seline said. Cool. Dylan shifted his weight. The Italian place on 4th? Maybe. They have good lasagna. I know. An awkward silence settled over them. Then Dylan cleared his throat. Look, I'm trying here. I know it's weird, but I'm trying. I know, Seline said, and her voice softened slightly. We both are. Yeah. Dylan looked at Caleb. You taking care of her? She doesn't need taking care of. That's not what I asked. Yeah, Caleb said. I am. Dylan nodded, seemed to accept that. Good. Okay, I'll let you guys go. He walked past them, and Seline turned to watch him leave. That was progress, Caleb said. Maybe. It was. She looked up at him, and there was something soft in her expression. Yeah, I guess it was. They went to dinner, and for the first time since everything had started, it felt like they could breathe. Like the weight of secrecy and guilt was finally starting to lift. It wasn't perfect. Dylan was still hurt, still working through his feelings, and there would be more difficult conversations ahead. But they were trying, all of them, and that had to count for something. Later that night, after Caleb had walked Seline home and kissed her goodnight at her door, he went back to his apartment and opened his laptop. For the first time in months, he didn't stare at a blank page. He wrote. The words came messy and imperfect, full of everything he'd been feeling, everything he'd been too scared to say out loud. He wrote about fear and courage, about the risk of letting someone see you completely, about the terrifying possibility that love might actually be worth the damage it could do. He wrote until his eyes burned and his fingers ached, and when he finally stopped, he had 20 pages of something that felt true. It wasn't a complete story. It wasn't polished or ready to show anyone, but it was a beginning. And for now, that was enough. The writing kept coming after that night, not in floods, but in steady trickles that felt manageable. Caleb would wake up at odd hours with sentences in his head, would pull over while driving to jot down dialogue on his phone, would lose entire afternoons to scenes that had been waiting years to be written. It wasn't always good. Most of it wasn't good. But it was honest, and that felt like progress. Seline noticed the change in him. They were at his apartment one evening, her reading on the couch while he worked at his desk, when she looked up and asked, What's different? What do you mean? You seem, I don't know, lighter? He turned in his chair to face her. I've been writing. Actually writing, not just thinking about writing. That's good. Yeah, it feels good. He paused. You're part of that, you know. How? I don't know exactly, but something about being with you makes me feel like I can risk failing. Like even if the writing's terrible, at least I tried. She set her book down, came over to where he sat. Can I read some of it? It's not ready. I didn't ask if it was ready. I asked if I could read it. He hesitated, then pulled up a document on his laptop, scrolled to a section he didn't completely hate. This part. Just this part. She leaned over his shoulder, reading silently. He watched her face, tried to gauge her reaction. When she finished, she straightened up. Well? He asked. It's raw. That's a nice way of saying it's bad. No, it's a way of saying it's honest. There's a difference. She touched his shoulder. Keep writing it, don't stop. Even if it never goes anywhere? Especially then. November came, bringing cold that settled into Millridge like it planned to stay. The leaves were mostly gone, the trees skeletal against gray skies. Caleb and Seline fell into a rhythm. Dinners at the diner, walks through empty parks, evenings spent in comfortable silence doing separate things in the same room. It wasn't dramatic or sweep you off your feet romantic. It was quieter than that, steadier. But the situation with Dylan remained complicated. He was trying, Caleb could see that. But trying and succeeding were different things. Dylan would go days being almost normal, texting Caleb about work, stopping by the bookstore to check on Seline, and then something would shift and he'd pull back again, distant and closed off. It was like watching someone try to accept something their gut kept rejecting. One Saturday afternoon, Caleb was at Dylan's house helping him fix a leaky sink when Dylan said, without looking up from the pipes, "You sleeping with her?" Caleb nearly dropped the wrench he was holding. "What?" "It's a simple question. It's not your business." "She's my sister. It's my business." "She's 32 years old, Dylan. Her sex life stopped being your business about 15 years ago." Dylan straightened up, wiped his hands on his jeans. "I'm not trying to be a dick. I'm just trying to understand what this is. If it's serious or if you're just what?" "I don't know, testing things out." "We're not testing anything out. We're together. We're seeing where it goes. Same as any couple. Except you're not any couple. You're you and my sister." Caleb set the wrench down, turned to face Dylan fully. "What do you want me to say? That I'll break up with her to make you comfortable? Because I'm not going to do that." "I'm not asking you to." "Then what are you asking?" Dylan was quiet for a moment, his jaw working. "I'm asking if you love her." The question landed hard, unexpected. Caleb opened his mouth, closed it. "I don't know," he said finally. "Maybe. It's only been a couple months." "But you could. Love her, I mean." "Yeah, I could." Dylan nodded slowly, looked away. "That's what scares me." "Why?" "Because if you love her and it falls apart, she's going to be destroyed, and I'll have to watch that happen. Again." "What makes you think it'll fall apart?" "Because most things do, especially in this town. People get together, think it's forever, then reality sets in and they realize they're just killing time until something better comes along. That's pretty cynical. It's realistic." "No," Caleb said. "It's scared. You're scared that if we don't work out, you'll lose both of us. And I get that. But you can't protect everyone from getting hurt, Dylan. Sometimes people have to take the risk. And if you're wrong, if you hurt her, then I hurt her, and I'll have to live with that. But I'm not going into this planning to fail." Dylan stared at him for a long moment. Then he bent back down to the sink, resumed working. "Just don't make me pick sides. Because if it comes to that, I'm picking her. I wouldn't expect anything else." They finished the repair in silence, and when Caleb left, nothing felt resolved, just postponed. That evening, he met Seline at the bookstore after closing. She was in the back room doing inventory, counting paperbacks and making notes on a clipboard. She looked up when he came in. "Hey, you're early." "Dylan asked me if I love you." She set the clipboard down. "What did you tell him?" "That I don't know. That it's only been a couple months." "Do you?" "No, I mean." Caleb leaned against the doorframe. "I know I think about you all the time. I know when I'm not with you, I'm usually wishing I was. I know you make me want to be braver than I actually am. Does that count?" "I don't know. Does it?" "You're really going to make me say it." "I'm not making you do anything. I'm asking if you want to." He crossed the room, stopped in front of her. "I think I'm falling in love with you. I don't know if I'm all the way there yet, but I'm close. And that terrifies me because I've never felt this before and I don't know how to do it right." She looked up at him and her eyes were bright. "You think I know how to do it right? I spent 2 years in a marriage that taught me all the wrong things about love. I don't have a roadmap either, so we're both just guessing." "Pretty much." "That's not very reassuring." "No, but it's honest." He kissed her then, and she kissed him back, and for a moment everything felt simple, even though it wasn't. When they pulled apart, she said, "I think I'm falling for you too, just so you know." "Yeah?" "Yeah, it scares me, but yeah. We're a mess. We really are." They left the bookstore together, walked through the cold streets toward her apartment. Halfway there, they passed Dylan's truck parked outside the hardware store. Dylan was inside, visible through the window, talking to the clerk. He didn't see them. Seline stopped walking. Should we go in? Say hi? Do you want to? I don't know. Part of me thinks we should. Keep trying to normalize things. But another part of me just wants one evening where we don't have to think about how he's handling this. Then let's keep walking. You sure? Yeah, we can deal with Dylan tomorrow. They kept walking, but Caleb felt the weight of it anyway. The sense that no matter how good things were between him and Seline, Dylan's shadow was always there, a third presence in their relationship that neither of them knew how to address. 2 weeks later, things came to a head again. It was a Friday night, and Caleb and Seline were at his apartment making dinner. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad, when someone knocked. Caleb opened the door and found Dylan standing there, looking agitated. We need to talk, Dylan said. Now? Yeah, now. Seline appeared behind Caleb. Dylan, what's wrong? Can I come in? They stepped aside and Dylan walked into the apartment, pacing like he couldn't stand still. He looked at them, at the half-prepared dinner, at the easy domesticity of the scene, and something in his expression hardened. I ran into Mom today, Dylan said. Seline went pale. And she asked me how you were doing, if you were seeing anyone. I didn't know what to tell her. You could have told her the truth, Seline said quietly. The truth? That you're dating my best friend and everyone's just supposed to pretend that's normal? It is normal, Dylan. People date. Sometimes those people know each other's families. It happens. Not like this, it doesn't. Caleb stepped forward. What did you tell her? Nothing. I changed the subject. But she's going to find out eventually, and when she does, she's going to have questions. Questions I don't know how to answer. Then let us answer them, Seline said. We'll tell her together. You think that's going to help? You think Mom's going to be okay with this? I don't know, but hiding it isn't working either. Dylan stopped pacing, turned to face them both. You want to know what I think? I think you're both being selfish. You want what you want, and you don't care who it affects. That's not fair, Caleb said. Isn't it? You knew this would be complicated. You knew it would put me in an impossible position, but you did it anyway. Because we care about each other, Seline said, her voice rising. Because for the first time in years, I actually feel like myself around someone. Because I'm tired of making decisions based on other people's comfort instead of my own happiness. So I'm just supposed to deal with it. Yes, you are. Because this isn't about you, Dylan. It's about me and Caleb and what we're building. And I love you, but I'm not giving this up just because it makes you uncomfortable. The silence that followed was thick and electric. Dylan looked at his sister like he didn't recognize her. When did you get so selfish? He asked. Seline flinched like she'd been hit. Selfish? I spent 2 years being unselfish, being what someone else needed me to be, and it nearly killed me. So yeah, maybe I'm being selfish now. Maybe I need to be. That's not the same thing. It's exactly the same thing. You want me to prioritize your feelings over my own, just like he did. You're just nicer about it. Don't compare me to him. Then stop acting like him. Dylan's face went red. He looked at Caleb. You're just going to stand there? This is between you and Seline. The hell it is. You're part of this. Yeah, I am. And I'm not apologizing for it. I'm sorry you're hurt. I'm sorry this is hard for you. But I'm not sorry for being with her. You should be. Why? Because you decided I should be? Because you can't handle the idea of me and your sister together? That's your problem, Dylan, not ours. My problem? Dylan's voice was shaking now. You were my best friend. You were supposed to have my back, and instead I fell for someone. That's all. I didn't betray you. I didn't lie to you. I told you the truth as soon as I knew it mattered, and you've been punishing us for it ever since. Punishing you? I've been trying to understand. No, you've been trying to make us feel guilty. There's a difference. Dylan looked between them, something breaking in his expression. I can't do this. I can't watch you two together and pretend it doesn't make me sick. Dylan? Seline started. No, I'm done. I'm done trying. I'm done pretending. You want each other? Fine. Have each other. But leave me out of it. He walked toward the door, and this time Seline didn't try to stop him. The door slammed behind him, and the sound echoed in the small apartment. Seline stood frozen, her arms wrapped around herself. Caleb moved toward her, but she held up a hand. Don't. Seline, I need a minute. She went into the bathroom, closed the door. Caleb heard the water running, heard her moving around, and knew she was crying even though she was trying to hide it. He sat on the couch, dropped his head into his hands, and felt the full weight of what had just happened settle over him. They'd pushed Dylan too far. He'd tried, had really tried, and they'd kept pushing. And now he was done. Not just upset. Done. Ava, listen to me. I know you think you're in love with this man, but you're not thinking clearly. You're letting your emotions cloud your judgment. My emotions are not clouding my judgment. If anything, they're making it clearer. You're throwing away your future for a man who can't give you what you need. He gives me everything I need. He has a child, Ava. A child who is not yours. Do you understand what that means? You'll always be second. You'll always come after her. He's already in my head. He's been in my head this whole time. She grabbed her jacket. I just need space to figure out what I want without everyone else's voices drowning out mine. How long? I don't know. Seline, please. I'm not breaking up with you, Caleb. I'm just asking for time. Can you give me that? He wanted to say no. Wanted to tell her that space was just another word for running away, that they needed to face this together. But the exhaustion in her eyes stopped him. Okay, he said. But call me. When you're ready. I will. She left, and Caleb was alone again, standing in his apartment with half-made dinner on the counter and the ghost of the fight still hanging in the air. He didn't hear from her for 3 days. On the 4th day, Dylan showed up at Caleb's door again. This time he looked tired instead of angry. Can we talk? Dylan asked. Haven't we talked enough? Apparently not. Can I come in? Caleb stepped aside and Dylan walked past him, went straight to the couch, and sat down heavily. I talked to Seline, Dylan said. Actually talked to her. Not yelling, not accusing, just listened. And she told me things I didn't know. About the marriage, about what he did to her. Not just the emotional stuff, the way he controlled everything. What she ate, who she talked to, how she spent her time, the way he made her feel like she was always wrong, always too much or not enough. Caleb sat in the chair across from him. She told you that? Some of it. I had to ask for the rest. She didn't want to tell me. Didn't want me to worry or feel guilty for not knowing. Dylan rubbed his face. I thought I understood how bad it was. I didn't. Not even close. Dylan, she said being with you is the first time since she left him that she feels like she can breathe, that you don't make her feel like she has to be smaller or quieter or different. You just let her be herself. Caleb didn't know what to say to that. And then she asked me why I was so angry about you two, Dylan continued, and I couldn't give her a good answer. I kept saying it was about protecting her, but she said it felt more like controlling her, like I was doing the same thing her ex did, just with better intentions. You're not him, I know, but I was acting like him, treating her like she couldn't make her own choices, like I knew better than she did about what she needed. Dylan looked up and his eyes were raw. I don't want to be that person. I don't want to be the reason she feels trapped. So what are you saying? I'm saying I was wrong, not about being hurt. I was hurt, and that's real, but about how I handled it, about making you both feel like you had to choose between being together and having me in your lives. He took a breath. I'm still not thrilled about this. It's still weird for me, but I don't want to lose either of you. And if being okay with you two is what it takes to keep you both, then I need to figure out how to be okay with it. That's not nothing, Caleb said quietly. It's not enough either, but it's a start. Dylan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I need you to promise me something. What? That you're serious about her. That this isn't just something you're doing because it's convenient or because you were bored. Because if you're not in this all the way, I need you to end it now before she gets any more attached. I'm in it all the way. You sure? I'm falling in love with her, Dylan. I already told her that. I'm not going anywhere unless she asks me to. Dylan nodded slowly. Okay, then I'll try to be okay with it. Really try this time. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. I'm still probably going to be weird about it sometimes, but I'll work on it. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Dylan said, You should call her. She thinks you're mad at her for asking for space. I'm not mad. Then tell her that. She needs to hear it. After Dylan left, Caleb picked up his phone, stared at Seline's name in his contacts. Then he called. She answered on the 3rd ring. Hey, Dylan just left. He told you we talked? Yeah. Are you mad that I told him things about the marriage? No. Why would I be mad? I don't know. I feel like I keep making things harder. You're not making anything harder. You're being honest. That's what we said we'd do, remember? She was quiet for a moment. I missed you. I missed you too. I wasn't pulling away from you. I was just trying to figure out what I wanted without everyone else's opinions clouding my judgment. Did you? Figure it out? Yeah, I want this. You and me. I want to stop second-guessing it every time something gets hard. I want to believe it can work even when it feels impossible. It can work. You don't know that. No, but I believe it anyway. That's either really brave or really stupid. Probably both. She laughed, and the sound made something in his chest unclench. Can I come over? Right now? Yeah, unless you don't want. I want. Come over. 20 minutes later, she was at his door. He opened it, and she stepped inside, and they didn't say anything, just held each other in the doorway like they were making sure the other was real. I'm sorry, she said into his shoulder. For what? For running. For not trusting that we could handle this together. You needed space. That's not the same as running. It felt like running. But you came back. Yeah. Then it wasn't running. It was just taking a breath. She pulled back enough to look at him. Dylan really said he's going to try? He did. Do you believe him? I think he means it. Whether he can actually do it is another question, but he's trying. That's something. It is. She touched his face. I don't want to keep talking about Dylan. What do you want to talk about? Nothing. I don't want to talk at all. She kissed him, and he kissed her back, and they stumbled toward the couch without breaking apart. They'd kissed before, many times, but this felt different, more urgent, less careful, like they were both done holding back. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Seline said, I want to stay tonight. Yeah? Yeah, if that's okay. It's more than okay. They moved to the bedroom, and what happened there was messy and imperfect and awkward in the way first times often are. But it was also real and honest and full of all the things they'd been too scared to say out loud. And when it was over, they lay tangled together in the dark. And for the first time since this whole thing started, Caleb felt like they might actually make it. Caleb? Seline said quietly. Yeah? I love you. The words landed in the darkness, simple and clear. I love you too, he said. I mean it. I'm not just saying it because we just, I know. Okay, good. She fell asleep not long after, her head on his chest, her breathing slow and even. Caleb stayed awake longer, staring at the ceiling, feeling the weight of her against him and thinking about how strange it was that 3 months ago he'd been stuck in place going nowhere and now everything had changed. Not because things had gotten easier, they hadn't. Dylan was still figuring things out, Seline was still healing from wounds that went deeper than she wanted to admit, and Caleb was still scared he'd mess it all up somehow. But they were trying, all of them. And maybe that was the point. Maybe love wasn't about getting it right. Maybe it was just about showing up, over and over, even when it was hard. He fell asleep thinking that, and when he woke up the next morning with Seline still beside him, he thought it again. The morning light came pale and cold through the bedroom window, and Caleb woke to find Seline already awake beside him, propped up on one elbow, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. How long have you been staring at me? He asked, his voice rough with sleep. Not long. Maybe 10 minutes. That's not creepy at all. She smiled. You snore a little. Did you know that? I do not. You do. It's quiet, but it's there. He reached for her, pulled her closer. You're making that up. I'm not. But it's cute, so I'll allow it. They lay there for a while, neither wanting to move, both knowing they'd have to eventually. The real world was waiting outside. Work, responsibilities, Dylan, all the complications they'd temporarily forgotten about in the dark. What are you thinking? Seline asked. That I don't want this to end. This as in today? Or this as in us? Both, either. I don't know. He looked at her. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for you to wake up and realize I'm not worth all the trouble. You are worth the trouble. You say that now. I'll say it tomorrow too, and the day after that. She touched his face. Stop waiting for me to leave. I'm not going anywhere. Promise? I promise. They got up eventually, made coffee, moved through the morning routine with the kind of easy comfort that comes from being genuinely at ease with someone. Caleb made toast while Seline leaned against the counter in one of his shirts, her hair messy, looking more relaxed than he'd ever seen her. I should probably go home at some point, she said. Change clothes, shower properly. Or you could just stay here forever. Tempting, but I have to open the bookstore at noon. Call in sick. I can't, I'm the manager. If I don't show up, no one opens. Then I'll come with you, help out. She raised an eyebrow. You want to work at a bookstore? Why not? I can shelve books, ring up customers, recommend obscure literary fiction that no one asked for. You're serious? Completely. Unless you don't want me there. No, I do. I just didn't expect you to offer. Get used to it. I plan on being insufferably helpful from now on. She laughed, and the sound filled the small kitchen with something warm and bright. They finished breakfast, and Seline went home to change while Caleb cleaned up and tried to figure out what exactly he'd just volunteered for. He'd never worked retail, had barely set foot in the bookstore except to pick Seline up. But the idea of spending the afternoon with her, even doing something as mundane as organizing shelves, felt better than sitting alone in his apartment pretending to work. He met her at the store at 11:30. She was unlocking the front door, and when she saw him, she smiled in a way that made his chest tight. Ready to be my unpaid labor? She asked. I expect to be compensated in coffee and conversation. Deal. The bookstore was quiet that afternoon. A few customers drifted in and out, a woman looking for a specific cookbook, a teenager hunting for something to read that wasn't assigned for school, an elderly man who came in every Saturday and spent an hour browsing the history section without buying anything. Caleb helped where he could, mostly just staying out of the way and watching Seline work. She was good at it, he realized. Patient with the customers, knowledgeable about the inventory, genuinely enthusiastic about helping people find what they needed. This wasn't just a job for her. It was something she cared about. Around 3, during a lull, Seline found him in the back room unpacking a box of new arrivals. You're actually good at this, she said. At opening boxes? It's not exactly rocket science. At being here, at not needing constant direction, at just fitting in. Is that surprising? A little. Most people who offer to help end up being more work than they're worth. I contain multitudes. She sat on the edge of the desk, swung her legs. Can I ask you something? Sure. What do you want? Long term, I mean. Not just with us, but with your life. Caleb set down the book he was holding, considered the question. I want to finish something. A story, a novel, anything. I want to stop feeling like I'm just killing time until my real life starts. I want to wake up and not immediately start making excuses for why I'm still in Millridge doing work that doesn't matter to me. Does Millridge matter? It used to. Or maybe it never did and I just convinced myself it did because leaving seemed harder than staying. And now I think I could leave. If there was a reason to. Like what? He looked at her. Like you. She went very still. What are you saying? I'm saying if you wanted to leave this place, I'd go with you. If you wanted to stay, I'd stay. I don't need Millridge. I just need you. Caleb, I'm not trying to put pressure on you. I'm just being honest. You asked what I want. That's what I want. A life with you in it, wherever that is. She didn't respond right away, just sat there looking at him with something complicated in her expression. Then she slid off the desk, crossed the small space between them, and kissed him. Not urgent or heated, just soft and deliberate. I don't know if I'm ready to leave, she said when they pulled apart. Not yet. I just got here. I'm still figuring out who I am without him. Then we stay. I'm not in a hurry. What if I never want to leave? Then we stay forever. I don't care, Seline. I just want to be wherever you are. That's a lot to put on one person. I know, but it's true anyway. She rested her forehead against his. I love you. I love you too. Even though I'm a mess? Especially because you're a mess. You match my mess. We're a complete disaster together. She laughed, and they stayed like that for a moment, wrapped up in each other in the quiet back room of a small-town bookstore. And Caleb thought that if this was what the rest of his life looked like, he'd be okay with that. The bell above the front door chimed, signaling a customer. Seline pulled away, composed herself, and went back out front. Caleb stayed in the back room, finishing the unpacking, and felt something settle in him that had been restless for as long as he could remember. That evening, after they'd closed up the store and grabbed dinner at a pizza place down the street, Caleb's phone buzzed with a text from Dylan. Dylan, you busy tomorrow? Caleb showed the message to Seline. Should I be worried? Probably not. Answer him. Caleb, not really. Why? Dylan, want to grab breakfast? Just us. Need to talk about something. Caleb, sure. Where? Dylan, that diner on Route 9. 9 a.m. Caleb, see you there. Seline was watching him. What do you think he wants? No idea, but at least he's reaching out. That's good, right? I think so. We'll find out tomorrow. The next morning, Caleb arrived at the diner 5 minutes early and found Dylan already there, sitting in a booth by the window, nursing a cup of coffee. He looked tired, but not angry, which Caleb took as a good sign. Hey, Caleb said, sliding into the seat across from him. Hey, thanks for coming. Of course. A waitress came over and they ordered eggs and bacon for Dylan, pancakes for Caleb, then sat in awkward silence until she left. So, Caleb said, what's up? Dylan took a breath. I've been thinking a lot about everything that happened, about how I reacted, and I realized something. What? I wasn't really mad at you or at Seline. I was mad at myself. Caleb frowned. Why? Because I should have seen how bad things were for her. When she was married, I mean. She was calling me less, making excuses not to visit, and I just thought she was busy. I didn't push. I didn't ask the hard questions, and then she came back here broken, and I felt like I'd failed her. Like if I'd been paying better attention, I could have done something. Dylan, that's not... Let me finish. Dylan's hands were wrapped around his coffee mug, knuckles white. When you two got together, it brought all that guilt back up. Because I couldn't control what happened to her before, and I couldn't control what was happening now, and it made me crazy. So I lashed out. At you, at her, at the situation. Not because you were wrong, but because I needed someone to blame for the fact that I couldn't fix everything. You can't fix everything. I know that now. Or I'm starting to. But it's hard to let go of that need to protect her, you know? She's my sister. I'm supposed to keep her safe. She doesn't need you to keep her safe. She needs you to trust her. I know. Dylan finally looked up, met Caleb's eyes. That's why I wanted to talk, to apologize, really apologize, not just say the words. I was wrong. About a lot of things. And I'm sorry. Caleb didn't know what to say to that. He'd expected defensiveness, maybe more anger, not this level of self-awareness. Okay, Caleb said finally. Thank you. I also wanted to tell you that I'm done being weird about you and Seline. I mean, it's still going to be an adjustment. I'll probably still have moments where it feels strange, but I'm not going to make you two feel bad about it anymore. You're good for her. I can see that now. I'm trying to be. You are. She's different with you, lighter. More like the person she was before everything went to hell. Their food arrived and they ate in silence for a few minutes. Then Dylan said, So where does this leave us? You and me, I mean. I don't know. Where do you want it to leave us? I want us to be friends again. Real friends. Not just people who tolerate each other because of Seline. I want that too. Then let's do that. Start over. Or not start over, but move forward, without all the baggage. Deal. Dylan held out his hand and Caleb shook it. It felt formal and strange, but also like something important was being acknowledged. A line drawn under the past, a commitment to something better going forward. They finished breakfast and walked out into the cold morning. Dylan clapped Caleb on the shoulder. You should know, Dylan said, Mom's asking questions about Seline, about who she's been spending time with. Seline mentioned that. She's going to figure it out eventually. Might be easier if you guys just told her. How do you think she'll take it? Dylan considered. Honestly, I think she'll be relieved. She's been worried about Seline's, like, knowing she's with someone who actually gives a damn will probably make her feel better. And the fact that it's me, her son's best friend, she'll probably find it weird at first. But Mom's practical. She cares more about whether you treat Seline right than about the optics of the situation. Good to know. You planning to tell her soon? I think so. Seline and I talked about it. We're tired of hiding. Then don't hide. Just be together. People will talk, but they'll get over it. Caleb nodded. Thanks, Dylan. For what? For trying. For being honest. For not giving up on us. You're my best friend, man, and Celine's my sister. I wasn't going to let either of you go without a fight, even if the fight was mostly with myself. They parted ways, and Caleb drove back to his apartment feeling lighter than he had in weeks. When he got home, he texted Seline. Caleb, had breakfast with Dylan, went better than expected. Seline, really? What did he say? Caleb, a lot. I'll tell you in person. Can I see you tonight? Seline, come to my place, 7 p.m. I'll make dinner. Caleb, you cook? Seline, barely, but I'll try. Caleb, can't wait. That evening, Caleb showed up at Celine's apartment with a bottle of wine and low expectations for the food. She opened the door wearing an apron over her jeans, her hair tied back, looking flustered. I'm in over my head, she announced. The recipe said this would take 30 minutes. It's been an hour, and I don't think the chicken's even close to done. What are you making? I was trying to make chicken marsala. Now I'm making something that might be edible if we're lucky. Caleb set the wine down, rolled up his sleeves. Let me help. You cook? Better than you, apparently. Together they salvaged the meal, and by 8 they were sitting at her small kitchen table eating something that wasn't gourmet, but was at least fully cooked. Seline poured the wine and they clinked glasses. To disasters, she said. To disasters that turn into something good, Caleb amended. I'll drink to that. He told her about the conversation with Dylan, about the apology and the handshake and the sense that maybe, finally, they were all going to be okay. Seline listened, her expression softening as he talked. I'm glad, she said when he finished. I've been worried about him, about us, about all of it. We're going to be fine. You sound sure. I am sure. For the first time in a long time, I actually feel like things are going to work out. I want to feel that way. But you don't? I do, mostly, but there's still a part of me that's waiting for it to fall apart. That's waiting for you to realize I'm too much work or too damaged or just not worth the effort. Caleb reached across the table, took her hand. I need you to hear something, and I need you to believe it. Okay? You're not too much. You're not too damaged, and you are absolutely worth every single ounce of effort. I know you don't believe that yet. I know your ex spent 2 years convincing you otherwise. But he was wrong, and I'm going to keep telling you that until you start to believe it. Her eyes filled with tears. What if I never believe it? Then I'll keep saying it anyway, for as long as it takes. She got up, came around the table, sat in his lap. He wrapped his arms around her, held her close, and felt her shake with quiet tears against his shoulder. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. Do what? Be loved. Trust someone. Let someone see all the ugly parts and not run away. You just keep showing up, that's all. You don't have to be perfect. You just have to be here. That sounds too easy. It's not easy, but it's simple. She pulled back, looked at him. I'm scared. Me too. Of what? Of messing this up, of letting you down, of waking up one day and realizing I wasn't brave enough to be what you needed. You're brave enough. How do you know? Because you're here. Because you didn't run when things got hard. Because you chose me even when it cost you your best friend. That's brave. We got him back, though. We did. But you didn't know we would. You chose me anyway. He kissed her then, slow and careful, and tasted salt from her tears. When they pulled apart, she was smiling. I really love you, she said. I really love you too. They spent the rest of the evening on her couch, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about the poetry she'd been writing, about the idea she had for turning the bookstore's back room into a small event space for readings and book clubs. He told her about the story he was working on, about the pages that were finally starting to feel like they might add up to something real. Will you let me read it? She asked. When it's finished? If it ever gets finished, it will. You just have to trust yourself. Says the woman who's terrified of trusting anyone. Fair point. We're both works in progress. I like that, works in progress. Not broken, not fixed, just in progress. Exactly. Around 11, Caleb said he should probably head home, but neither of them moved. Finally, Seline said, "Stay. Again." "You sure?" "Yeah. I don't want you to leave." "Then I won't." They went to bed, and this time it felt less urgent, less like they were trying to prove something. It felt comfortable, easy, like this was just what they did now. And afterwards, lying in the dark with Celine's breathing evening out beside him, Caleb thought about how strange it was that 3 months ago he'd been stuck in place, going nowhere, and now everything had changed. Not because some dramatic event had swept in and fixed everything, but because he'd taken one small risk. Because he'd gone to a bookstore to check on someone, and that someone had turned out to be exactly what he needed, even though he hadn't known he needed it. Life worked like that sometimes. The important moments didn't announce themselves. They just happened, quiet and small, and only later did you realize they'd changed everything. The next few weeks passed in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Caleb and Seline fell into routines, dinners at her place or his, walks along the river when the weather allowed, quiet evenings working side by side on their separate projects. Dylan started joining them occasionally, tentative at first, but gradually more comfortable. He still had moments where things felt awkward, where he'd make a joke that didn't quite land or look at them in a way that suggested he was still processing. But he was trying, and that mattered. In early December, Seline suggested they tell their mom. They were at Caleb's apartment when she brought it up, and he could see the nervousness in the way she twisted her hands together. "When?" he asked. "Soon. Before Christmas, at least. I don't want to spend the holidays lying to her." "How do you want to do it?" "Together, you and me. Maybe invite her to lunch or something." "Okay, let's do it." They called her the next day, asked if she was free for lunch on Saturday. She said yes, sounded curious but not suspicious. They met her at a cafe downtown, and from the moment she saw them walk in together, Caleb could see her putting the pieces together. "Hi, Mom," Seline said, hugging her. "Hi, sweetheart. Caleb, good to see you." "You too, Mrs. Hart." They ordered food, made small talk about work and the weather, and then Seline took a breath and said, "Mom, we need to tell you something." "I'm listening." "Caleb and I are together, dating, have been for a few months now." Their mom set down her fork, looked between them. "I see. You're not surprised," Caleb said. "Not entirely. I've suspected for a few weeks now. The way Seline's been talking about you, the way you look at each other. I'm not blind." She paused. "Does Dylan know?" "He knows," Seline said. "He's adjusting, but he's okay with it. Or he's trying to be. And how do you two feel about each other?" "I love him," Seline said simply. "He's good to me. Good for me." Their mom turned to Caleb. "And you? How do you feel about my daughter?" "I love her," Caleb said. "I know it's probably strange given that I'm Dylan's friend, but I can't help how I feel. And I'm not going to apologize for it." She studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled. "Good. You shouldn't apologize. Love isn't something to apologize for." "So you're okay with this?" Seline asked, relief evident in her voice. "I'm more than okay with it. I'm happy for you, both of you." She reached across the table, squeezed Celine's hand. "I've been so worried about you since you came back. Worried you'd never let yourself trust anyone again. But seeing you now, seeing how you are with Caleb, you look happy, really happy." "I am happy." "Then that's all that matters to me." She looked at Caleb. "You take care of her. And if you hurt her, you'll have me to answer to. Not Dylan, me." "Understood." "Good. Now let's eat. I want to hear how this actually started." They spent the rest of lunch telling the story, leaving out some of the more painful parts, but keeping enough of the truth that their mom could understand how they'd gotten here. She listened, asked questions, and by the end of it, she was smiling. "You know," she said, "your father and I met in a bookstore. Did I ever tell you that, Seline?" "No." "He was looking for a book on carpentry. I worked there. We got to talking, and 6 months later we were engaged. Everyone said it was too fast, that we barely knew each other. But we knew enough. We knew what mattered." "What mattered?" Caleb asked. "That we made each other braver, that we wanted the same things out of life, that when we were together, the rest of the world got quieter." She looked at Seline, then at Caleb. "That's what I see when I look at you two. So don't let anyone tell you it's wrong or too fast or doesn't make sense. If it works for you, that's all that matters. After lunch, they walked their mom to her car. She hugged them both, made them promise to come for Christmas dinner, and drove away. Caleb and Seline stood on the sidewalk, watching her go. "That went better than I expected," Seline said. "Your mom's great." "She is. I'm glad we told her." "Me too." They walked back to Caleb's apartment hand in hand, and for the first time since this whole thing started, it felt like they weren't hiding anymore. Like they could just be together, out in the open, without worrying about who saw or what they thought. Christmas came, and they spent it with Celine's family. Dylan was there, of course, and their mom, and a few aunts and uncles and cousins who didn't know about Caleb and Seline yet, but figured it out pretty quickly. There were questions, some awkward moments, but mostly there was acceptance. People were happy for Seline, happy to see her smiling again. And if some of them thought it was strange that she was dating her brother's best friend, they kept it to themselves. After dinner, Caleb and Dylan ended up on the back porch, drinking beer and watching snow fall in the yard. "This is weird," Dylan said. "Yeah, but good weird, I think." "You think?" "I'm still getting used to it, seeing you two together, but it's getting easier." "That's something. You make her happy. That's what matters." "She makes me happy too." Dylan nodded, took a long drink. "You know what I realized?" "What?" "I spent so long trying to protect her that I forgot she doesn't need protecting. She needs supporting. There's a difference." "There is." "I'm still going to look out for her. That's not going to change. But I'm going to trust her to make her own choices, even if I don't always understand them." That's all anyone can ask. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, and Caleb thought about how far they'd all come. From that night in Celine's apartment when everything had exploded, to here, standing on a porch at Christmas with snow falling and something like peace settling over them. It hadn't been easy. It hadn't been smooth. But they'd made it through. In January, Caleb finished the first draft of his novel. It was rough and messy and probably terrible in places, but it was done. He printed it out, all 230 pages, and brought it to Seline. "What's this?" she asked. "The thing I've been working on. I want you to read it." "Really?" "Really. You said you would when it was finished." "Well, it's finished. Or the first draft is, anyway." She took the stack of pages, held it carefully like it was something precious. "I'll read it tonight. Don't feel like you have to finish it if it's bad. It won't be bad. You don't know that. I know you wrote it. That's enough." She read it that night, and the next day, and the day after that. On the fourth day, she called him. "Come to the bookstore," she said. "Now." He went, heart pounding, convinced she was going to tell him it was awful. He found her in the back room, his manuscript sitting on the desk, and when she looked up at him, her eyes were red. "Seline, this is good," she said. "Really good. Not perfect, but good. Raw and honest and real." "You're not just saying that?" "I'm not just saying that. There are parts that need work, scenes that drag, but the bones of it are strong. You should finish it, polish it, send it to agents." "I don't know about that." "I do. You have something here, Caleb. Don't let fear stop you from doing something with it." "What if no one wants it?" "Then you write another one, and another, until someone does. But you have to try. You owe yourself that." He looked at her, at the manuscript, at the possibility she was offering him, and for the first time he let himself believe it might actually be possible. "Okay," he said, "I'll try." Good. Over the next few months, Caleb revised the novel. He cut scenes, rewrote dialogue, fixed plot holes. Seline read every draft, gave him honest feedback that stung sometimes, but always made the work better. By spring, he had something he was proud of. Not perfect, but real. He sent out query letters to agents, expecting rejection, and was shocked when 3 of them asked to read the full manuscript. In May, one of them offered representation. "I can't believe this is happening," Caleb said when he got the email. He was at Seline's apartment, and she was reading over his shoulder. "I can," she said. "You're talented. You just needed to believe it. I wouldn't have gotten here without you." "Yes, you would have. Eventually. I just helped you get there faster." "Still, thank you." "You're welcome. Now let's celebrate. Dinner at the diner?" "Perfect." That night at their usual booth, Caleb felt something shift. Not dramatically, not like a door slamming or a light switching on. Just a quiet settling, like a puzzle piece finally clicking into place. He'd spent so long feeling stuck, feeling like his life was happening somewhere else to someone else. But sitting here with Seline, talking about his book and her plans for the bookstore and what they might do next year, he realized his life was happening right now, right here. And it was good. "What are you thinking about?" Seline asked. "That I'm happy. Actually happy. Not waiting to be happy. Not almost happy. Just happy." "Me too." "Yeah?" "Yeah. For a long time I thought happiness was something other people got to have. People who hadn't been broken by bad relationships or bad choices. But I was wrong. Everyone gets to have it. You just have to let yourself." "That sounds like something you should write down. Poetry worthy even?" She smiled. "Maybe I will." "Are you writing again?" "Real writing, not just notes in a notebook?" "I am, slowly, but yeah." "Can I read it?" "Someday. When I'm ready." "I'll wait." "I know you will. That's one of the things I love about you." "Just one?" "One of many." They finished dinner and walked back to her apartment. Summer was coming, the air finally warm, and the whole town felt different at night, softer, quieter, like it was holding its breath. "Do you ever think about leaving?" Seline asked as they walked. "Sometimes, less than I used to." "Why?" "Because I'm not running anymore. I'm building something, here, with you." "What if I wanted to leave someday?" "Then we'd leave, together." "Just like that?" "Just like that." She stopped walking, turned to face him. "I don't deserve you." "That's not true." "It feels true." "Then you're wrong. We deserve each other. We're both just doing our best, trying to figure this out as we go." "I like that," she said. "Figuring it out as we go. No rules, no expectations, just us." "Just us," he agreed. Later that month, on a warm Saturday evening, Caleb took Seline to the river, the same spot where they'd sat all those months ago, when everything had been new and terrifying and uncertain. They found the bench, sat down, watched the water move past in the fading light. "Why here?" Seline asked. "Because this is where it started, really started. Not at the bookstore, not at my apartment, but here, where we decided to try." "That feels like a lifetime ago." "It was 6 months ago." "I know, but so much has changed." "Do you regret any of it?" She thought about that for a moment. "No, even the hard parts, especially the hard parts. They taught me things I needed to know." "Like what?" "Like I'm stronger than I thought. Like loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself. Like it's okay to want things, even if they scare you." "I learned some things too." "Yeah? Like what?" "Like courage doesn't mean not being afraid. It means doing the thing anyway. Like sometimes the risk is worth it, even when it feels impossible. Like home isn't a place, it's a person." She looked at him, and her eyes were bright in the dying light. "You're talking about me." "I'm talking about you." "That's a lot of pressure to put on one person." "I know, but it's true anyway." She leaned her head on his shoulder, and they sat like that for a long time, just listening to the river and breathing together and being present in the moment. No worries about tomorrow, no regrets about yesterday. Just this, just now. "Caleb," she said eventually. "Yeah?" "I think we're going to be okay. Not perfect, not easy, but okay. Better than okay." "You think?" "I know." She lifted her head, kissed him, and tasted like hope and summer and all the tomorrows they were going to build together. When they pulled apart, the stars were just starting to appear overhead, scattered across the darkening sky like promises. They stayed at the river until full dark, then walked back through town hand in hand, past the bookstore where it had all started, past Dylan's house where the lights were on, past the apartment where Seline was slowly building a life that felt like hers. They didn't talk much, didn't need to. Some things didn't require words. When they reached Celine's building, she stopped at the bottom of the stairs, turned to face him. "Come up," she said. "I was planning on it." "No, I mean, come up and stay. Not just tonight. Stay. Move in. Build this with me." Caleb's heart kicked against his ribs. "You're serious?" "Completely. Unless you don't want to." "I want to. I've wanted to for months. I just didn't want to push." "You're not pushing. I'm asking. So what do you say?" I say yes. Absolutely yes. She smiled, the kind of smile that reached her eyes and made her whole face light up. Good, because I don't want to do this without you. Any of it. The scary parts, the good parts, all of it. I want you there. I'll be there. I promise. Even when I'm difficult? Especially then. Even when I doubt everything? I'll believe enough for both of us. That's not how it works. Then we'll figure out how it works, together. She kissed him again, and this time it felt different. Not like the beginning of something, but like the middle. Like they were already deep into the story and there was so much more left to write. They went upstairs together, and Caleb looked around the small apartment and tried to picture his things here, his books on her shelves, his clothes in her closet. It was easy to imagine, easier than it should have been. When do you want me to move in? He asked. Whenever you're ready. Tomorrow? Next week? Next month? I'm not in a hurry. How about next weekend? That gives me time to pack and give notice on my lease. Perfect. They spent the evening planning what furniture to keep, what to donate, how to make the small space work for 2 people. It should have felt overwhelming, but it didn't. It felt right, like this was just the next natural step, not a huge leap, but a steady walk forward. The next week passed in a blur of packing boxes and sorting through years of accumulated junk. Dylan came over to help, made jokes about Caleb finally growing up and moving in with a girl, and seemed genuinely happy for them. On Saturday morning, Dylan and Caleb loaded everything into a borrowed truck and drove it to Seline's apartment. It took most of the day to get everything upstairs and organized. By evening, the apartment looked lived in and cluttered, and somehow exactly right. The 3 of them, Caleb, Seline, and Dylan, stood in the middle of the living room, surveying the chaos. This is weird, Dylan said. You keep saying that, Caleb replied. Because it keeps being true. But good weird. I'm getting used to good weird. High praise, Seline said. I'm trying. Give me credit. Dylan grabbed his jacket from where he'd tossed it. I'm going to head out. Let you 2 settle in. But for the record, I'm happy for you, both of you. Thanks, Dylan, Caleb said. Don't make me regret it. We won't. After Dylan left, Caleb and Seline collapsed on the couch, exhausted and covered in dust. We did it, Seline said. We did. Now what? Now we live. Together. Figure out whose turn it is to do dishes. Argue about whether the thermostat is too high. All the boring domestic stuff. Sounds terrible. Sounds perfect. She turned her head to look at him. I love you. I love you too. Even with all my baggage? Especially with all your baggage. It matches mine. She laughed, and they sat there in the quiet of their shared space, and Caleb thought about how strange and unlikely this whole thing was. That a simple act of kindness, going to check on someone because his friend asked, had turned into this. Into love, into a home, into a future he hadn't known he wanted until it appeared in front of him. The thing about life, he realized, is that you can plan all you want, but the important stuff usually happens by accident. You go to a bookstore, you touch someone's shoulder, you kiss them in the rain, and suddenly everything is different, and you can't imagine going back to how things were before. That's what courage looks like. Not big dramatic gestures, but small choices made every day. The choice to be honest. The choice to stay when things get hard. The choice to believe that love is worth the risk of getting hurt. Caleb had spent years being afraid. Afraid of leaving Millridge, afraid of failing as a writer, afraid of letting someone get close enough to really see him. But Seline had taught him something important. Fear was just another feeling, not a stop sign. You could be afraid and still move forward. You could doubt yourself and still try. And maybe that was the whole point. Life wasn't about waiting until you were sure, until everything was perfect, until all your fears had dissolved. It was about taking the step anyway, into the unknown, and trusting that you'd figure it out as you went. Summer turned to fall, and Caleb and Seline settled into their shared life. It wasn't always easy. They had fights about stupid things, moments where they drove each other crazy, days where the apartment felt too small for 2 people with big personalities. But they worked through it. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's needs, each other's ways of being in the world. Caleb's book sold to a publisher. Not a huge deal, not a bestseller, but a real book that would exist in the world with his name on it. Seline threw him a party at the bookstore, invited everyone they knew, and Caleb spent the evening in a daze of gratitude and disbelief. Speech, someone shouted, and everyone joined in. Caleb stood in front of the crowd, looking at all the faces. Dylan, his mom, Celine's mom, friends from town, regular customers from the bookstore, and Seline standing near the back with tears in her eyes and a smile on her face. I don't know what to say, Caleb started, except thank you to everyone who believed in this book before I did, to my agent for taking a chance on an unpublished writer from nowhere, to my editor for making the story better than I ever could have on my own. He paused, found Celine's eyes. And to Seline, for showing me that courage isn't about not being afraid. It's about being afraid and doing the thing anyway. I wouldn't be here without you. The applause was warm and genuine, and afterwards people came up to congratulate him, to say they couldn't wait to read it, to tell him they'd always known he had it in him. Caleb smiled and thanked them and felt like maybe, finally, he was becoming the person he'd always wanted to be. Late that night, after everyone had left and they'd cleaned up the bookstore, Caleb and Seline walked home under a sky full of stars. I'm proud of you, Seline said. I'm proud of us. Us? Yeah, for making it through, for not giving up when it got hard, for building something real. We did do that, didn't we? We did. She took his hand, laced her fingers through his. Do you think we would have made it if Dylan hadn't come around? I don't know, but I'd like to think so. I'd like to think we were strong enough to choose each other no matter what. I think we were. I think we are. They walked the rest of the way in comfortable silence, and when they got home, they stood on the landing for a moment, looking at the door with both their names on the mailbox. Home, Seline said. Home, Caleb agreed. They went inside, into the life they'd built together, and closed the door on the world outside. And there, in the quiet of their shared space, Caleb thought about how fear had almost stopped him from having this, how easy it would have been to walk away that first night at the bookstore, to never go back, to let the moment pass without acting on it. But he hadn't walked away. He'd stayed. He'd tried. And because of that, everything had changed. That's the thing about courage. It doesn't roar. It doesn't announce itself with trumpets. It's just the quiet voice that says, one more time, I'll try again tomorrow. It's showing up even when you're not sure it'll work. It's choosing love even when love is scary. It's letting someone see you, really see you, and trusting they won't walk away. And sometimes if you're lucky, they don't walk away. They stay. They build something with you. They love you not despite your flaws, but because of them. Because your imperfections match theirs in ways that make sense only to the two of you. Caleb had spent years thinking he needed to fix himself before he deserved to be loved. But Seline had taught him differently. Love wasn't about being perfect. It was about being honest, about showing up messy and scared and human, and trusting that the other person would show up too. That night, lying in bed with Seline curled against him, Caleb felt something he'd been chasing his whole life without knowing it. Peace. Not the absence of fear or doubt or struggle, but the presence of something stronger. Purpose. Connection. Home. And he thought, this is it. This is what I've been looking for. Not a life without problems, but a life where the problems are worth solving. Not a love without challenges, but a love worth fighting for. He held Seline a little tighter, and she murmured something in her sleep, and Caleb closed his eyes and let himself believe fully and completely that they were going to be okay. Better than okay. They were going to be happy in the messy, imperfect way that real people are happy. With fights and reconciliations, with doubts and affirmations, with bad days and good days, and all the ordinary moments in between. Because at the end of the day, that's what love is. Not a fairy tale. Not a perfect story with a neat ending. Just two people choosing each other, again and again, through all the chaos and uncertainty of being alive, and finding, in that choice, something worth holding on to. Something worth everything.